Hello, everybody. I'm George from Ireland. So, in about 24 hours, the talks are due to commence in Alaska between President Donald J. Trump and Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin in a US military base. Perhaps ironically, Alaska was that symbolic, a territory of the Russian Empire that they sold to the United States in 1967. And many of Putin's fans are openly say that doesn't count. We're going to seize it again. Reminds you how hyper aggressive much of Russian opinion is. Putin himself said only last month that any territory in which a Russian soldier has ever set foot is Russian forever. He's also said there is no end to Russia's borders. There's no end to his megalomania and his ultra aggression. So the signs are ominous. Witkoff, an absolute dimwit, a New York property developer, a Trump brown noser, was sent over for these sort of pre-negotiations with Putin. And at the time he met Putin previously, he came out. It could be speaking from a script that was written for the Kremlin for him. And Trump, we know, is a dimwit, will probably just parrot all Putin's lines. I remember when they met in Helsinki several years ago in Trump's first term, and then Putin completely had Trump eating out of his hand. There was nobody in the room except Putin's interpreter. So what private deal be struck? And that goes against all precedent. There's always a note taker from the American side. So the American public, even not immediately, could eventually find out what was said, what was agreed. Are there private promises, private threats? Would it be the ominous PP tape? Is there more compromising material on Trump? Is he financially beholden to Putin, and so on? So why? There was no good reason for Trump to break with protocol on this one. So it's very worrying. And Trump's recently said, no, he won't let Ukraine down. And if you believe that, you probably believe he brought peace within 24 hours, and so on. So wow, the two biggest liars in the room in the world. So and remember, Trump has made several demands already in this presidential term for a ceasefire in Ukraine, and it hasn't happened. Putin has played him along every single time. He's intensified bombardments. So Putin thinks that he holds the cards, all the cards. And in the short term, he does. They've ramped up drone production. That's been successful for them. And actually they had a bit of a breakthrough earlier this month, capturing about over 600 square kilometers of territory. So it was actually speeding up, and that's near Pokrovsk. The situation in Pokrovsk is increasingly perilous for the Ukrainians. And I've got to say, I thought it was going to fall months ago. The Ukrainians have really defied all expectations. They've exceeded all expectations. They've surpassed what anyone thought they were capable of doing. They've held places like Bakhmut a couple of years ago, or Mariupol at the beginning of the war, longer than anybody foresaw, and made the Russians pay a very heavy price for it. But nonetheless, you can't stop the inevitable. So that's where, near the Dobropilya and Pokrovsk sector, they're moving forward. So it looks like maybe the whole of Donetsk Oblast will soon be in Russian hands, and so on. So they got forward near Taretsk and so forth. So it's increasingly perilous for the Ukrainians, who just don't have the numbers. I don't want to just say manpower, woman power too. Don't have the munitions. Not enough being supplied by the United States or anybody else. And the Russians, they've recruited various people from other countries, including Pakistan, for example, to fight for them. Also people to work in factories. Some of these sort of low-skilled jobs, making drones, getting people from as far away as the Central African Republic. Russia House, meant to be like their Russian Cultural Center, is simply advertising jobs. These salaries would be very attractive compared to someone in one of the least economically developed countries in the world. And indeed North Korean slaves, and I really do mean slaves, working up to 20 hours a day, well below the Russian minimum wage, and most of the money going to that cruel regime in Pyongyang. So just in case there are any naive, idealistic left-wingers out there who think that Russia's got something to do with socialism or social justice, you really need your head examined. I mean, Ukraine isn't perfect, but it's miles better than Russia in that regard. So the situation's increasingly fraught for the Ukrainians, being pushed back. Now, that breakthrough that Russia has, I don't think they'll be able to really exploit it, like suddenly get through to Kiev in the next week or even the next month. But yeah, it's more difficult. Looks like there's more of a pullback. So Putin thinks, well, as things are going my way, why would I compromise now? Because if you carry on like this, at this rate, retreat will turn into rout, and I'll take the whole of the Ukraine next year or something. Obviously, Russia can't sustain these losses and can't sustain it economically all the time. They can sustain it into 2026, probably through the whole of 2026. If we come into 2027, I think that's when they really do have a real problem, comes to crunch. Also depends what happens with the oil prices. Now OPEC has recently started pumping out more, so oil prices going down. The oil cap on Russia hitting them. Remember tariffs on India for purchasing Russian oil. Now Trump has also cut himself off at the knees. Remember the 50-day deadline, which went to 10 or 12 days. Well, we're past that 12 days, and nothing has happened. He's the boy who cried wolf. He makes a threat. He doesn't follow through. Putin watches very, very closely as a very astute observer of people's psychology, and as they say, Taco, Trump always chickens out. Like, that's it. It's Trump always chicken. He's never gonna back down until he backs down. He'll definitely do this until he doesn't do it. So that's why Putin is not too worried. No serious action is going to be taken against him. Now Trump is also erratic. He's sort of easily rattled and irritated. So I think Putin will be very careful not to say anything that would irk him. He knows how to caress Trump's ego. We're in this together, you and me. I like you. I admire you. You're so clever. You're a real man. And the wokesters, the BLM people, the leftards, they're a problem for me too. And the Ukrainians, they're on the side of the Democrats. They're against you. They're very unfair to you. They're like the liberal media, bring up all these bugbears. And then, this is a property deal. We'll strike a deal because you're the peacemaker. Then you got the Nobel Prize. So appeal to his raging vanity. Anyway, so Putin thinks he's in a strong negotiating position, saying we have to recognize the sovereign territory, the land we've already seized, but even more that we don't quite control of these 5 illegally occupied regions of Ukraine. But that's obviously making crime pay. Now, the Ukrainians recognize they can't go on forever. They're paying a very high price. Their situation is bad. The precarity of it is clear. But they know that Putin can't be trusted. And if you give him this, he's simply going to come back demanding more. He might stop, lick his wounds, beef up his armed forces, think the Ukrainians will lower their guard. Some of these guys, have hardly had a day off in 3 years, are going to demand a day off now. Think just how bad the Russian military is. So let's look at the Great Patriotic War, as they call it. From sort of November 1941, the nadir for the Soviet Union, the main predecessor state, well, Russia's the main successor state of that, and the German army was in the suburbs of Moscow. And then 3.5 years from them, they advanced, 1,600 kilometers to Berlin? Whereas how in the 3.5 years of this war, they've only advanced 60 kilometers. The deepest point of penetration that they've seized the land and held it is 60 kilometers, more like 100 kilometers when they got to Kiev. Of course, they were driven back out of that quite quickly. So, the Ukrainians are facing multiple problems. The Sapsan missile production facilities were destroyed. So they're just not getting enough munitions, just not enough of everything, really. Exhaustion is the recognition. There's no way they're going to win back the illegally occupied territories. Might have to be some sort of de facto recognition of the Russian illegal occupation. But the security guarantee is what the Ukrainians really need. If we end this war now, that Putin's not going to renew it at a time of his choosing. That's the really worrying thing. So I'm very perturbed. I think Trump's going to try and do some deal and say that's it, and then he can say that was a success. And obviously there'll be enough of the MAGA lot who'll buy that. Some of the actually peaceniks and the Democrats as well, and thinking that and Putin thinks divide your enemies, and then he thinks that the limp-wristed Europeans will not be willing to pay the price of funding and arming Ukraine, and he's probably right, because they're too busy with all this benefits, with paying for people to laze about, paying for half the population to go to university, and so on. Paying for everybody to be indoctrinated with far-left ideology. So it's very troubling. Right, I hope I'm wrong. Thank you for watching my channel. Make sure you subscribe on Patreon, donate on PayPal, georgecallan79@gmail.com. Goodbye.